This meeting is called to order.
City Attorney Doctor.
Here.
City Manager Burton.
Here.
Commissioner Dean.
Here.
Commissioner Fever.
Here.
Commissioner Reed.
Here.
Commissioner Logan.
Here.
Mayor Collins.
Here. Welcome and thank you for participating in the City of Helena City Commission work session. We are pleased to be able to provide the alternative meeting format in the city's effort to broaden public participation. Please be patient as we may experience technical difficulties during the meeting. We welcome your public commentary. Please read the following tips and guidelines for the app usage and your participation. Before we go further, I just want us to take a moment of silence for those kids in Texas from Brown Elementary School. However way you want to do it, let's just try to remember them in whatever way. Sound.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. We wanted to share with you a new evacuation map that's circulating the community. Starting next week is our plan. This will actually get mailed to all of our utility customers. Then we'll have extra copies that our first responding agencies can share with people. This project actually initiated before I started a couple of years ago. Updating our evacuation map, which has existed and was available on our website, but it was pretty hard to read, really small, and wanted to provide something that people could stick on their wall or their refrigerator that actually shows them, based on where they live, what possible evacuation routes they could use in an emergency, and then some additional tips and details for evacuation planning. And you'll also notice there are stars indicating assembly points. If there ever was a significant evacuation, would identify where people could stop and touch base with emergency personnel to let them know if they have in fact evacuated their home, and if there's any other information that our first responders need to know. As I said, this will be getting mailed out next week. We're working with our police and fire departments on finishing it, and it will go in hand with our next round of PSA videos that we've been working on. Is going to focus on emergency preparedness, evacuation planning. So our goal was to get this out before those videos come out to support those. If you have any questions about the material for myself or the fire police departments, let me know.
Sir, please.
Thank you. And I can't say that enough. I think one of the realities is this is one of the best things that our citizenry can understand in terms of wildfires, is that idea of what they need to do in the event the wildfire heads toward Helena. And in fact, that's one of the biggest difficulties communities have had that have experienced such fires, is people not knowing what to do. So, man, I got to applaud the efforts on the part of those involved in getting this together. I'd like to share it as widely as we can, as I think I found during my time as fire chief, one of the things was a sense of complacency on the part of the citizenry in terms of, well, we've got a 24/7 fire department. We got you guys, in other words. In reality is there's so much of this that is one of the ways that other fire departments have put it is this is a sharing of responsibility. We do have responsibility in terms of response, but the citizenry has to be educated and understand what their role is, not only in terms of prevention, but when the mayor issues evacuation order, they know what to do. And so this is a platform, but that would be a little bit. Thank you all.
Commissioner Wilmer.
Yeah, thank you all for getting this squared away. It's a great step. So,
And I would just add real real quickly as well. We do note it on here, but it is important to point out, this is the plan as of today. And as the community grows and changes, new development, the routes could change. And so, you know, we definitely want people to understand that it's part of why we talk about evaluating the plan annually, practicing the plan, but also, you know, we'll have up-to-date information on the website, and as, you know, as this changes, we'll be able to share that as well.
You bet.
I'm gonna assume when this goes out, you'll also be including it in some social media and digital posts.
Yeah.
Is there a way that we could get some of the digital files to share as well?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, you want to talk about curb and caps?
Yes. Chief, we were just talking about the deer program. Remind me to visit with you about cats. I'm just kidding. We do have a proposal, and actually I met with the Humane Society, and I know they're going to met with what they're finding, and I'll come back at a future date, but just so you're aware, what they're finding is that homeless or wild or feral cats are propagating all over town, the county, and the country. Yeah. One way that they're learning throughout the United States to deal with this is a catch program, spay and release, which also seems to be much more advantageous than the alternative. So, Chief, I will want to meet with the animal control folks. I think that I was convinced that it's a more humane management program than when I met with the Humane Society folks. We'll vet that and see what our role would be with the city attorney's office and the police department. The Humane Society. There are examples of ordinances which this would require that you act on an ordinance which would empower the Humane Society with the program. But we'll do further homework. And I think we have more discussions to have, more outreach. But certainly up in the meeting today there that we asked them to pursue. Valid considerations that ought to come their way.
Just to add, it will cost the city nothing. We have created that to cover all the costs. Now that we're talking about budget, someone said, oh, budget item, no, zero. We'll now move on to miscellaneous general government funds. Director Danielson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Commission. Good to see you this afternoon. Before we get started, I know that there have been a couple of inquiries as to when the entire budget book will be posted. And our goal date for that is June 1st. Not only in packet to review for the June 6th meeting, but also for the public to view the entire budget book. It's still in progress. Tonight we're still going through budgets and making some final edits, and that is our goal to get that book posted by June 1st, by the end of the day, June 1st. I also wanted to let you know that I will be traveling for that first meeting. I'll be on June 6th. I'll be attending virtually, but I'm going to introduce my budget officer, Zach Smith, who will be in person in lieu of my physical presence. I'm just trying to let them know that. So having the questions about the budget book, just please let me know that we are feverishly working on it.
And making good progress.
Yes. So the first fund I have before you is the CARES Act ARPA fund. As you know, we haven't really appropriated any funds from that. We are expecting a grand total of $8,473,896. Other than committing $1.8 million to the water treatment project, that leaves the rest of the fund available for distribution when we come back to the commission to present proposals on how you would like to distribute the funds from them. I did look into when we'll be getting our second tranche. We got our first tranche in June 11th of last year. I was thinking it came in May, but so it's the requirement is to make the second tranche 12 months from the first date of the tranche. So we should be expecting our second tranche in June.
Yes, just a quick question, Mr. Mayor. And is it we have to have it appropriated by FY 24, or does the Titans year come into play?
Thank you, Commissioner Bean. The final rule indicates that all ARPA funds need to be committed by the end of December 2024 and actually spent cash out the door by the end of December 2026. Any other questions on that ARPA fund?
So the sum total of what we will have available, a little over 6 mil.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Commissioners, I was just wondering, for the folks that are trying to listen online, it's with the fans going. Unfortunately, we need them to sense the number of folks in the room, but if you could project just a little bit more in this direction, it'd be helpful.
Will do.
Thank you.
That's good.
Well, Director Danielson, you heard her.
Okay, I'll look at the camera. So the second fund before you is just our geo bond fund. This is for a specific payment of one bond. It's our 2017 geo bond. It was actually originally a 2008 bond that was refinanced in 2017. The payment for that is $552,900. We do levy separate tax dollars to cover the payment of this bond. That is a 20-year bond, so it will not be sunsetting until 2037. The next fund is our lighting districts. I will tell you that this is in draft form. I didn't have the opportunity to finalize all of the assessment information until after this got posted. It's fairly close. It's within about $50,000, but the final assessment information will be in your budget book. How we do that is we calculate the electricity costs and the other infrastructure costs that are passed off to the city every year. We update it and then we reevaluate the cash balances in the fund and what's needed to cover the costs of the bills in the next fiscal year. And then we prepare the assessment that will come for the commission. Any questions on the lighting districts?
I was impressed with how many there are.
Yes, I wish I could tear that down.
Okay.
There are many, yes, and so it's, we try to amend districts, but there are certain occasions where we have to add a new district, and so that's, over the years, it's grown to quite a sum. And the statutes indicate that we have to have a separate fund for each district. Each district has to separate a separate fund and operate as though it's its own entity. The next fund is Fund 340. It's just our, this is a fund that had been historically used for sidewalk improvements. Effective with fiscal 2023, we will be managing the sidewalk program through the streets fund and not separately through this. There's not really any appropriations for this fund. It's more of a cash in and a cash out because AshCast comes in to pay for their their sidewalk improvements that we have on people's tax bills. It just comes in as cash and goes out as cash. But we will not be making any further disbursements or loans out of this fund. Future loans will be done through the streets fund. The next three funds are our tax increment financing funds. I won't have final tax information until we get our assessed values for these particular funds, but I provided an estimate of what I believe the tax dollars might generate in fiscal 23. Again, I'll have a final when we actually appropriate the final budget in September after we get our assessed values on these. You will see that there are appropriations in here for each of the funds, just so that we don't have to actually do a budget amendment. However, the funds that are dispersed from this, these particular tax increment finances and districts have to go through their boards, and then recommendation has to come to the commission for the disbursement of funds on this. I did note that the Capitol Hill URD TIF district, I'm estimating about $110,000 in TIF revenue from that this year, whereas we weren't quite sure what was going to happen when we prepared the budget for fiscal 22 on that TIF district. As they develop that area, they've already got a Taco Bell, there's more development in there, but it's a little bit hard to say. Benefits will be going into that area. However, they're a nonprofit organization, so we won't be generating any tax increment from them. And we'll just have to wait and see what happens. So.
So for all three of the TIF and URD, do we, if folks are applying for funds in this fiscal year, and they say that TIF board approves a certain amount that is over what the cash on hand is, but still within what we were budgeting the revenue would be for that fund, do we have any policy that says yes or no, we can do that if we don't have that revenue already?
We have, the practice has been not to release any money until we have the cash.
Got it.
So I know that there have been some requests to use for expecting taxes to come in.
Yeah.
But the practice has been not to release any money until we actually have received the cash from the taxes.
Okay, and then the on the benefits question. So they're exempt from all property taxes and assessments.
I don't know that they're exempt from certain assessments, but they are exempt from property taxes.
I think that it would, and this is not obviously during the budget, but maybe we're not, I mean, whenever there may be some opportunity, I think it would be a really helpful thing to have, not just for this commission and future commissions, but the public in general. Helena is very unique in how much of our most valuable property is not taxed and frequently not assessed just because of the entities. And not saying that, we don't value them because we've got great jobs, but it does put the burden on the citizens. So I think being able to quantify that would actually be really valuable. I know that could be a bigger lift, but I do think it's some data that would actually give context as to, yes, we want all of these things and we want to be able to provide these services, but if not every property in town is actually paying for the services that it is receiving, it's supplemented by private taxpayers and our citizens.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioner. You are correct. I mean, the city of Helena has a large portion of its land that is occupied by state and local government and nonprofits, and that does put the tax burden on the rest of the taxpayers to pay for general services that come up. But I think we can look at that and see if we can go through that exercise to find out how much of the land is. I think we can probably come up with how much of the land is actually exempt. I don't know that we can get assessed values on that, but we can certainly get the percentage of land that is not taxed.
Can you name names
Of
of the properties that are held by nonprofits? The state government's pretty easy to see, the county government's pretty easy to see, but nonprofits.
well, medical facilities are one of them. I off the top of my head, I can't go through
Well,
Case
no, I
was,
mean-
You know, I
In the
prefer
list.
like-
I was ready to jump in.
I'm just interested in, you know, about identifying properties that pay no taxes, who owns the property, that pay no taxes. This is what I'm saying.
Yeah, we can get that.
That'd be.
I believe we can get that.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I might just a quick follow-up question. Commissioner Dean had asked about whether or not it's a policy for the TIF fund spending, and you said that that practice is there a policy, or
I'll have to actually go and look into each of the boards defining what they put together as their practices and policies for their individual jurisdictions.
I would just, as a follow-up, it would be, I think, an interesting exercise to see if they are the same within 3 districts, and if not, that might be something.
I mean, I'm just gonna add that the appropriate time. Then we'll talk about where the district's at in terms of growth. What
Any-
level we're going.
Any other questions for Laura? Please continue, Director.
Thank you. The next section is the general capital fund requests, and we did bring this before you. I'm sorry, I have a tip on my throat. To look for some of your direction on the list, and so I have representatives here from facilities, parks, I think it's parks.
Yep.
There she is. And
Please.
and police, and this is the list that had been presented to the commission. We've made a recommendation of $1.3 million using $400,000 of the existing general capital fund, and excuse me, I'm sorry, and $744,000 from the general fund. And subsequent to this distribution, our facilities manager also submitted some requests for this fund. I'm sorry, I have allergy problems this time of year, and it's just kicking me. So anyway, he had requested what we could potentially use general capital funds for, and his top priority is the civic center barrel roof replacement for $420,000. I'm gonna step out for a second and let my budget officer.
Can I add to that?
Yep.
Leah? Sheila? So I think if you'll recall, when we went through the facilities budget, that over time, we had accumulated capital dollars per building. And although in theory, when we started doing this, it makes a lot of sense. But it's hard to take $10,000 to the fire department to do a substantial. It's all general fund. And I mentioned that we'd come back with perhaps a different approach, which is out of that $1 million that's sitting in facilities, let's take one of the most important priorities, fix this. And then in the meantime, next year with the potential building board, we can talk about how to establish grants and capital set aside to continue to build that fund for other priorities as they could. So the facilities is out of that $1 million that we've already had set aside for facilities. Troy, you want to speak to the director?
So, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, of all the critical items that we see in all the different facilities, a few of them rise to the top for priority. Critical roofing is always a high priority for us. The Civic Center barrel roof of the auditorium right now is that top priority for the state. It is it's an expensive project. I think just due to the nature of the volume of the critical function of it, to maintain those envelope of that building. we've patched it for many, many years. It still continues to. So that was the number one.
Yes, please. Just to add as a reminder, that we've already had the discussion on the boiler at the Law and Justice Center. Where tentatively you've set aside 400,000. The county has also set aside 400,000. One priority. But I just wanted to remind you that we had that discussion.
So I see here, and the Civic Center air conditioning, with the grant they got, is it specifically towards that?
So the grant that they received,
Right.
I think that Parks Department is proposing to use the grant for the air conditioning.
Yeah, but it's not the 1.3 million that we needed. But the grant would actually, it's just that we have to get other funding sources.
And that's a grant from the closed venue.
Shuttered venues.
Or the
Shuttered
venue.
So that,
I'm not following the bouncing ball here, so the 400 grand that we in the county together, each for 400, for the one, I get that.
Mhm.
I don't see the roof or the civic center on this sheet, so that must be something in addition. And how much is that?
$420,000.
So why wouldn't that be on the same sheet?
because it's coming from a different fund.
Oh, I love this.
So
It's a
when,
different fund. So our capital, I get it.
when we looked at the facilities budget with this building, Law and Justice Civic Center, there's $1 million in that fund that we accumulated over time for capital improvements. That would fund the barrel vault improvements you guys agree with the civic center.
So the barrel vault would be a 400,000 throw as well, but that's coming to us yet again. At
Well,
some point, we have
in
to
the-
make a decision.
in the final budget, and we're laying it in front of you tonight, to say, yes, it's a decision.
And so that's in addition to these proposals here, which I assume are proposals that you want to go forward, even though we may not agree with this.
It is a list of needed improvements, Mayor. We're suggesting 1.3 million in total out of the general fund. I'm not trying to put you in a position of saying no to projects, but rather saying yes to projects. And so I don't think that we can fund all of these. But the directors are here to give advice as to what their priorities would be. And you can tell us as a group which ones you want. And if it comes to a point where that might take too long or something, and we ask us to come back with a definitive recommendation between among the departments, we will do that.
A few of these, I could be wrong, but I think a few of them were originally on like, the ARPA wish list. Is there a way that we could identify where there is overlap? I don't know if all of them are, but I think I'm pretty sure that part of it, like Centennial paving, some of the I thought that the downtown electrical, walking mall electrical was on there, I could be wrong. But it's, I mean,
Try to respond. So, Mayor and Commissioner, I've been provided files of ARPA discussions. There are a lot of conversations out there. What I've asked the city staff to do is recognize that those are conversations. And that we need to engage the commission in terms of the sideboards of what you're gonna want us to prep up for ARPA.
Yeah.
So no decisions have been made other than the public works improvement. And but whatever's not funded on this list could potentially go into that list. And, and then you'll say, yeah, we wanna include certain nonprofit opportunities, et cetera. And then we would wanna reach out appropriately to make those decisions and see what kind of projects come back for consideration.
And I guess the reason for my question is that I know Treasury broadened the guidelines as to what you can use the ARPA dollars for, so I just want to make sure there's nothing that we maybe say no to and instead say, let's consider for ARPA that turns out to not be able to be used with ARPA dollars.
Very consideration. Yeah. So when the final Treasury guidance came out on ARPA, essentially it's all replacement revenue, and will qualify as city to request that, which means that the ARPA money that you have in the bank and the ARPA money that you're going to receive in June is essentially general fund.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, we've got these general fund capital requests here. And I think when Superintendent Sampson reported us on facilities, and what I've heard today, we have a fund of about $1 million, of which 820,000 is spoken for. No. So you said boiler and barrel roof, would that come out of that $1 million?
So there, the boiler, and we had that conversation early on, is already set aside within the general fund, 400,000 of the city's participation. The county is also set aside 400,000. So that's one decision. You made it with general fund money. It's not included in this.
So, Mr. Mayor, so out of the $1 million that Superintendent Sampson talked about, only 420,000 of that is spoken for. This order,
Yes.
that's close to this.
Forward fund. That's correct. So that'd be a cash. Flow.
So are you wanting a decision from us on these general fund requests today?
I wanted, Mayor, I wanted the opportunity for the commission to weigh in. That the department heads here that can prioritize. What I don't want you to do is get stuck in the conversation that goes back and forth. So I offer that if you want us to report back with the recommendation that there are 1.3 million, then we would do that between the departments. We wouldn't be able to come back and say, here's what
In my opinion, I think it's appropriate. Because we just want to know the priorities. I don't want, we shouldn't be spending money on things. So they can put their priorities in there. You can present it.
So the way that we'll do that, and we've done it in past years this way, is we'll bring in human resources, police, public works, parks, and then we'll get in them, and then we'll weigh the priorities that they have against overall citywide impact, and come back with a more part.
Yeah, absolutely supportive of that. I just would rather have a better sense of what staff feels like. Obviously have a better understanding of your operations and the needs that you have, prioritize those, and I feel like I'd be able to make better decisions.
And we certainly are prepared to do that now or later, but
Thank you. And we also just wanted to bring the list in front of you in case there was a priority that the commission had identified to be able to get your feedback for the list as well. So that you had an opportunity.
Last question. So I think it's maybe at our last budget discussion about about the idea of facilities having a list, because Troy went over a lot of them that day. And I got glassy eyed, I think, and there were a lot, and I guess I would be interested in knowing. Hotel that we need to have in the future. Something that I'd be interested in.
Yeah, and we can either speak to it or deliver it to you. And I do want to point out Commissioner, that the $1 million we're talking about in facilities is city money. So that doesn't have anything to do with this building or law and justice. It's all the other city facilities. And that will include other priorities. Potentially the Myrna Lloyd brought up, et cetera, that city responsibility for facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to make sure it's clear for everyone who might be watching, the difference between what's on this list is a capital project, which includes things as small as like $8,000, and general fund transfers to things like the golf course, restaurant, debt service. How do you make that distinction when we're talking about general fund support for different projects? So what gets on this list and what doesn't?
So this is what our, anything that meets a capital threshold over $5,000 is for general government funds need to go through this particular fund before. So this is representative of all of the asks that were requested. The transfer to the city center that comes from the general fund is more for operations and operates. It's $360,000 for this. The transfer to the golf course fund for about $143,000 is specifically for the debt service. The $415,000 that the general fund is transferring to transit is a required formula for match services for their particular operations. So most of those other quote transfers from the general fund are for operating purposes and not specifically for capital purchases.
So, thank you, Director. So we're just, this is a little different to say, hey, here's a whole bunch of requests, and here's some money. But we did want to at least give you the opportunity to express the importance of this and have this discussion. I can tell you that it generally agreed that 1.3 is the benchmark, and that between and among the departments, we can report back with our top priorities will be across the city.
So, and I hear you, but what do we do with the air conditioning? Because we do have a grant that is supposed to be going towards that. I'm just going to let it sit there. I mean, I don't understand that. So, because I see the balance of that is about 800,000. So where are we going to reconcile that?
Well,
Use it or lose it grant. We either spend it or we don't.
I think our parks director.
Sure, Mayor, Commissioner, we can spend it in other ways. We do have a time, it is time sensitive on when we can spend it. I don't know the exact cutoff date. This is what we have identified as, we think, the best use of spending that grant money is to put towards this HVAC system.
So after we get the budget adopted, you'll know what did or didn't get funded here. Then we tee up on the parameters you establish for ARPA. And then we go, and at the same time, we're going through capital budgets, which includes 1.2 million. Is that fit in ARPA, or do we do some other financing mechanism for that? But collectively, you're gonna understand the capital plans from water, sewer, wastewater facilities, the civic center, park and recreation. And we've got a lot of money, but it's limited in terms of the scope. And then that'll lead us into the discussion on next year's budget. So here's what we were able to do. Here's what never got done. What options do we have relative to rates, bonding? And remember, we have the fire master plan coming back to review in front of you as well. So there's going to be a lot of discussion, and the office, or hopefully, if we set it up, it's going to allow you to think what's the most important, because we can't do it all at once. Where's the most important investment that each of you individually see, and how to get there with tools other than ARPA, because you have already put that for priorities.
Thank you, sir.
I just have two comments. One on the Civic Center HVAC. And this doesn't need to be answered today, but if there's a way for us to figure out, like, can we do, I think we could do like one room first and then room another time, like maybe start to piecemeal it. The other reason I'm saying that is because, and I wish I would have thought about this in January, I actually think that could be a very good project for the Montana Historic Preservation Grant, which was already due, and the legislature is the one that appropriates that during the session. But once the session's over, the next round will come, and they love funding. We're in the past have funded a lot of kind of infrastructure, building infrastructure improvements like HVAC systems or ADA bathrooms. We did some of those grants. Obviously, in historic structure, which would allow us to have a lot of, have an economic impact because we're able to use it year round. So that could be a really good candidate for that grant. My other comment would just be on when the departments are prioritizing this. And I'm only speaking for myself, but I think my mind is that the biggest priorities are, one, like quality services for our citizens, and then two, the things that improve quality of life for our community. And I don't know if that helps at all, but those are kind of the things that I think about when I look at these type of lists, or what are the ones that will give us the biggest bang for our buck in those two kind of buckets.
Well, thank you, Commissioner, because I see now that Park's gonna be happy.
And Mayor, if I might too, because I think this is a context that we've been talking about for some time, for some months. So if we're looking at just this one example in terms of the linear nature of this conversation, we got 350,000 applied for air conditioning. We've taken 400 and some thousand out of the middle, which leaves 600,000. Plus you got 6.6 million in ARPA. Plus we got rates and bonding and other conversations to have. That if it doesn't come off of this list, and I can tell you that we got to fight for it. But if it doesn't come off this list is not what we do.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Please continue.
Well, I liked what Commissioner Dean just said. So I think there is some formative info there. But there's always an issue between needs and wants. And I would expect staff to come back to what we need, not what we want. And then if we fund all our needs, then the wants will take care of themselves over time, or they just fall on the wayside. Sounds like we have some serious needs, and that would be my emphasis. But there are some amenities. The term you used. But quality of life is what you use. There are some amenities that have been hanging out there for a long time that I would not want to be lost in this discussion. A long time is many years. And so kind of needs, amenities that people have been asking for a long time that would enhance the value and quality of the city. And then the wants should be at the bottom. And I see some wants on here, but I also see some needs and amenities. I don't know if that discussion is tonight, because I'm still kind of interested in seeing sort of the general fund and ARPA getting kind of a concrete sort of way. What you can fund out of general fund and what you can fund out of ARPA presented at much the same time. In fact, it's six. I mean, mixing, matching, I get it. I understand we can leave some things that are not general, look at our general fund, pay for them, and leave some extra over for ARPA. I get that, but that we should understand if that's what we're doing, if that in fact is, or if that's your intent.
Yeah, and Mayor, I think that what we're really teeing up is not only the budget today,
Yeah,
in terms of the 440, but it's all the other processes and reviews and decisions that you have in front of you. There's a cause and effect. Five, you will make the decision on how we apply those dollars. So if we start that conversation now, then it's going to continue on to future discussions. Based upon your options, you'll make those decisions. And ultimately, we'll get to the point where the money that's sitting in the bank now is gone. But the needs and the wants won't be 100% gone. And then we have to switch gears as to how do we prioritize those and fund those over time as well.
Well, and then I would conclude, maybe we'll talk a long time tonight, or maybe not, but if we talk a long time, this is not my final conclusion. So I would just say that there are alternative sources of revenue as we go forward. And so it doesn't have to just be a static general fund, what we know we have now. It doesn't have to be simply what we know in ARPA funds. I mean, there are other ways to fund things that people need. And some of our biggest needs, we aren't going to be funding the general fund and the other money anyway. Not bad. So we probably ought to identify them, make sure that we aren't somehow or another wishing on a star here about how we take care of when you talk about the fire master plan. I think obviously we need another fire station. I won't get an argument with me on that. But we don't have enough money to pay for that right now out of our general fund. So there has to be some revenue stream that we're thinking of. The city may be thinking of to make that happen.
Well, and I couldn't agree more, but first we got to pass the budget.
I got it.
And there's hundreds of billions of dollars that are going to be released in terms of the infrastructure bill. There are the tools that are at your availability, whether it's water rates or bonding. And so all those tools are there. I think that once you make your priority decisions and allocate the ARPA, then that tells you what didn't do. And then at the same time, we're putting more of a focus on the infrastructure bill. What can we fund with that? And as we walk down the road, we'll be talking about that. It's a huge opportunity. And still you're going to have unfunded or unmet needs. And at some point, we'll be talking about what tools are in your chest relative to rates and bonds and other tools relative to future priority needs after we take care of these others.
Thank you. The next fund is just our copier revolving fund. It's just an internal service fund where departments pay the department and then they're leasing their copiers and when the company does their copiers, they have the money. It's kind of like a savings account, so offshore account. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any on that. The next one, 645, is our property and liability insurance. We don't have our final assessment for that yet. I have projected about 4.7% increase in the premium, but we'll be getting our invoice in late June, and so won't have that final until the final budget adoption in September for the liability insurance. The process that we do is we go through and identify all of our assets. We reach out to all the departments, ask them to communicate with us on their, verifying all their city assets, and then that information is submitted to NRMA, and it goes through the evaluation process, and then they finally get back to us with what our assessments need to be for liability insurance. The health and safety program, this is Fund 360, or excuse me, 650. This is just how the contributions that the city makes, the employees make, and external parties make into the fund, and then we pay the insurance premiums out of this fund. We're expecting a 3% health insurance premium increase this year. Commissioner Fever asked about how much of the health levy was funding our health insurance, and so I did have the opportunity to go back and look at that levy, and when they first levied it, they first did a levy for that supplemental levy, permissive levy in 2002. It was 9.74 mils back then. And how the formula works is you create a base year and what your health insurance premiums are, and then you're allowed to levy any increment above that for general fund employees. So the answer to that question is that it's an increment above our base premium for our general fund employees. And I'm gonna write that down. Comes out to be almost, over my notes right now, but comes out to be about roughly 88-90% coverage for general fund employees. Does not cover any enterprise fund employees, like the lottery.
Okay.
I will make a note that on page 25, you'll see at the bottom a transfer out to the general fund for $136,000. When I first calculated the estimated health insurance premium, I was about $136,000 short. So when we prepared a balanced budget, so I'm proposing to take $136,000 out of reserves in that liability and that health insurance fund and move it over to the general fund to cover this year, and then we'll be able to move forward with the correct calculation in the future. Now that I have the model and researched the model and got that in front of me.
So just to follow up,
Mhm.
does the commission have to act on this levy? It's permissive but automatic, or what?
The levy comes to the commission after we get our assessed values, and then you adopt that tax levy in September, final adoption in early September.
That's kind of performance, isn't it? Otherwise, we see everyone.
Yes.
Just asking.
I don't know that we want to do that. It's over $2 million.
No, I heard you.
Good point. The question was a good one, not only from a policy perspective, but with all the turnover and change that has happened, it also made us go back to the base we calculated. And because of the question, we found that the calculation was incorrect. And that's the adjustment that the director's talking about. So now we're where we should be. I just want to make sure that's cool. But
Any questions on the health insurance fund? The next fund is the dental program. It operates the same as the health insurance, and then the vision program that operates the same as the health insurance. We just, city contributions go into those funds, as well as employee contributions and external parties, i.e. the library and the airport and retirees. And then we pay the premiums for those out of that. The dental program is self-insured. We do have a third-party administrator, Delta Dental, that handles that for us. But dental program is a little bit different from the health insurance, where health insurance, we pay a premium. The dental program, we actually pay claims. So it's self-insured. And so it could vary from year to year. It's a little bit hard to predict if somebody is going to have a claim against the fund that's a little bit higher than the previous year, but I've estimated about $42,000 in claims next year, and the revenue coming into the fund is sufficient to cover. And that is the end of my presentation.
Comments or questions for Director Danielson?
even though we've been asking, we ran along. Any other? Do you have any public comments? Clerk, do we have any raised hands?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Attention, thank you. Move along. Public Works. Public Works Director, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Commission. Tim, do you have anything you want to say before we get started here?
No, I think that you guys are all ready to go. And just sit to the side and if that's up to sale, there's my hand.
All right, thank you, Mayor Commission. Today,
I'm gonna head over to the other side for that.
Okay. Just the org chart that we'll throw up. One that I did hand out is the PowerPoint that I will be going through. So we'll be going through side by side. And then there are placeholders that I gave you a little bit bigger of a handout to be able to see them. I know it's a little small, but I didn't think you wanted to roll a piece of roll paper to be able to actually read them. But we'll go through is, this is Public Works, this organization here. This is our org chart. There is a couple of requests that we have in here that are new, but other than that, it is status quo. I wanted to bring up that we have around 90 FTEs in Public Works, not counting the Lewis and Clark County landfill of their employees that we actually manage through an interlocal agreement through Pete. And I wanted to point out that have our superintendents here and our city engineer of all the divisions that are out there. So we have Jamie that is the city engineer. You have Ben Rigby that you saw the other day for the water treatment. Then you have Pete that does the solid waste, Trent that does utility maintenance. And then you have Jeff, one with utility maintenance that is unique and it is kind of different in the budget is Trent does all of the distribution for both water, wastewater, and stormwater. So it gets a little confusing to try and say we have a division, but has 3 different funds that also involve Jeff and Ben's budget. So it'll be a kind of cumbersome when we get into the budget because we'll both have Ben and Trent talk about one, and then Jeff and Trent talking about another budget, and then Trent alone with the stormwater. So we will be getting into this and we can talk about anything in the organization that you want to. And then we are going to talk of the one request that we have is industrial facilities manager. It is a new position. The only real new position that we have is what we're finding out is that, as you can see with the other facilities that we have out here, is there's getting to be a big gap. You know, it's a flag out there that we are not upkeeping the shells of our buildings that we need to, like our water treatment plants, you know, of the facade and everything. Is the superintendent's doing an awesome job keeping the process train going and treating the water and treating everything, but the buildings itself, that is not their expertise. And facilities these are industrial buildings. These are big buildings, big pumps, big everything is different than dealing with other facilities. So not taken away from anyone, it's just a gap that we are seeing that we are not being able to keep our liabilities and our buildings up to shape. So that is one area that we're asking for 1 FTE to be funded, and then it'll be spread throughout the enterprise funds. So it'll be reimbursed. You won't see the effect on the general fund. With that is we have also had, this is a rebuilding year. This year and next year are rebuilding. If you take a sports context out there, is we are at a cycle where we have new leadership, both in city management and then also in public works. And our master plans are getting to the end of the era. It's getting into the cycle, and we need to redo the master plans, which we funded last year and are getting started to be able to do this. Is we need to have a better handle to know what we have, what condition it's in, and then what is it going to cost to be able to do. So this is a great spot for you guys to be able to be in, because we are bringing those master plans to you, and you are going to be setting a foundation for the next 20 years to be able to do that. So that's why we're looking at the budget of where I set this, or we set this budget together of everyone, is this is a status quo. we aren't asking for anything big until we get these master plans in place and get more information to you. So it's status quo. There are no rate increases, even though we did it. We are at a point that we basically have completed a water and wastewater rate study that we will be bringing to you here in the next couple of months, maybe in August, to talk about what our rates need to look like, and it'll be in conjunction with the capital master plan or a capital plan that is coming forward. So there are no rates. We are rebuilding, setting the foundation, and then zero rates at this point. There's a couple in solid waste, which Pete can talk to when it comes up, is we are spending some cash, so we don't have to do rate increases, but that is because of the master plan. So that is the premise of what the budget is going forward. Some of the accomplishments for Public Works and Public Works Administration is we have a new deputy director here, Ed. Then we have an environmental permit and pre-treatment coordinator that was essential to help with the pre-treatment EPA regulations that are out there. It's been great. Then new city engineer Jamie Clark, and then wastewater treatment superintendent Jeff Brown. So those are new people that are coming in. We have quite a few. The other one is ARPA. It's taken some time, but we have $13 million that we are going to inject into the water treatment, which we will talk about all those projects later on in the presentation. And then the rate study that I talked about, and then the solid waste strategic plan that we did in conjunction with the CCB. A few of the goals that we're looking at is perfect and develop the groundwater rights. Then we're going to implement outreach and education. I think that's one area that in Public Works we've been lacking. We don't actually do a great job of showing the public of what we actually do and what is out there. I mean, we have hundreds of millions of dollars worth of liabilities, if not more, and we're a big percentage of the city, but we do not do a good job. And Ed has been vital in bringing that forward. We've looked at hiring a consulting company to come in and help us out. So, and that's all on Ed. And then adopt the engineering standards. Jamie has done a great job of getting to a point where we're almost ready to bring the engineering standard update to you. We've had public input and we're bringing that forward. The challenges we have is the cost increase, of course, gas, you look at gas, we have that. Regulations, that's huge. We have new MS4 permits, we're having the discharge permits, we're going through all them with DEQ, and there's a lot of unknowns and there's huge liability sitting out there for us. And one is the stormwater asset assessment, that we need to look at is, along with the airport, you went through the streets, is it looks like we need to look at and figure out what we need to do the stormwater with the impervious area and how we're assessing it. So we have some money in there to do that, but that's one that, as far as general public works, that we're gonna have to focus on because of the airport. And then of course, aging infrastructure. And then we've talked about the one request for the industrial facilities manager and that new division. And then we have a sustainability coordinator, which has come up a lot. And I think it came up in a couple of other conversations with the budget, is we have a halftime FTE for sustainability. What we're finding out is that we can't keep a person around for halftime anymore. We've hired 2 people, one never came, another person very good left. And so with this is to make that another halftime FTE is to help out public or solid waste to do the recycling coordinator. It fits. The sustainability coordinator was already doing some of the recycling, and there's a recycling coordinator at the transfer station. So just try and take the half FTE and make it a full FTE, makes it more marketable. We'll have someone around full time and it fits better in the overall organization. So those are the only 2 requests that Public Works has, and will be substantially the only changes that we have, other than our chemical prices. I mean, we'll have Ben speak to it. It's astronomical what those chemical prices are doing. So with that, that's basically Public Works admin and the industrial facilities, which we'll ask some questions, but I'll turn it over to Jamie for engineering, just to go over what his accomplishments, goals are for the engineering department, and then we can look at that part of the budget if you have any questions.
Yes, excuse me 1 minute. I'm looking at the your org chart, and I see some blank spots, and then I see some vacant. Are those going to be, I mean, are they part of your budget? Because these blank spots, I see about 10 of them.
Mayor's with this is with the blank spots. We left them blank because they are temporary employees that we are going to hire. So the blanks are, they're vacant because they're temporary. We just don't have anything. And then if it's vacant, except for the one over in engineering, is the vacant. And they are part of the budget and we're trying to hire them now. And then you'll see a couple up there. We have a GIS person that left. We have a sustainability coordinator, and then the rest of them are just temporary employees. We left them blank instead of really saying they're vacant because it's kind of a different one. So sorry about that, but that
No,
is,
no, that's fine.
is there.
Thanks. Any other comments or questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I just want to make sure I understood what happened here. I thought we had already agreed to have a sustainability coordinator full.
Well, that's what this represents.
So this isn't a request, it's already in the budget.
It is.
It's already in the budget.
Mayor, Commissioner, yes, these are all in the budget that we presented to you, but that is the change in the budget that is the one that would.
Oh, it's a
be
change in the
requested.
budget. Okay, I see.
Is from last year.
I got it. So now that that's clarified in my mind and you know what you're doing and I'm figuring it out, that's a good thing. Second, does this individual now who's going to be also apparently recycling coordinator, and I agree this, but obviously overlap, do they have to account for their time like half and half, or they just are what they are and they do what they need to do to be both?
Mayor and Commissioner, typically is that we charge out half and we make sure as the manager that you look at it and they are who they are. So that they do the halftime is the recycling that's gonna be in there, but we make sure that it is
So
accounted.
they have to
correctly.
account for their time when they're doing recycling. They
Yes.
Account for their time when they're the coordinator for sustainability.
Yes.
Any other comments or questions for the director, please?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I have a question on the proposed new FTE for the facility superintendent. And I'm wondering how that overlaps, or does it overlap with actual facilities? Like, we do that in other places where a department has their own facilities person rather than the facilities department dealing with it.
Mayor, commissioners, is there will be a little bit of overlap, is what we're finding is that it's a much different position. You know, instead of taking care of this building and then law and justice, is that there is a need for an additional person with additional ability to be able to go out there. Nothing that Troy does, he does an amazing job to be able to do that. There is some overlap in some of the buildings, and we are not taking the internal charge away from facilities, but there are offices that are out there that we will look to be able to do it. But there are buildings that no one is taking care of right now, as is put on superintendents, and they frankly do not have the skills or time to be able to do that. It's more of the time.
And I would just add, the real difference is office buildings versus industrial.
Okay, so on that point, I know one of the comments and I think the discussions we had during facilities was, I think there's a lot of support for the type of data that we're going to be able to get from the new system that facilities will be using. That's not going to, public works buildings will not be exempted from that, will they? Because I mean, that's obviously probably one of the largest users.
I would have to say no, but I mean, we would work in hand in that regard.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. I think we certainly can. It's, I know Public Works, and I think those guys use a lot of a different program, which is City Works. But the program that we have put in place is expandable and can incorporate additional facilities and staff to work within that program.
Okay, because the only comment I would have is that, especially when we start talking about, and the city managers talk about this a lot, of where, you know, we're trying to really get a good grasp of what we have and what condition it's in, and, you know, how can we make things more efficient? I think at the broader level, it does us no good if everything is siloed and we can't see it in one picture. So I think that ensuring that we can, I'm not opposed to this position, and it's not, you made a good argument for it, but I think that I really want to make sure that since Public Works is, you know, the department that is a quarter to a third of our city, maybe more, of the services that we provide, like one of the most essential of departments, that we have it integrated citywide.
Mayor, Commissioner, that is the ultimate plan, is to have it integrated in there and be helpful and work hand in hand with the facilities so that we do not overlap. We're not paying for stuff to do and not doing it twice. So it is stuff that they have done. We will take that in and either use that same program or come back and say, this is a different program that we want to use, but I'm planning to use the program right now. That they haven't, all the work that they haven't done will not go to waste.
Commissioner, I just add that I really like what you said. We know what we own, what condition it's in, it's tied to a capital plan, and how do we finance a high level of maintenance over time, because we're the stewards of the citizens' property and it ought to be in good shape.
All right, Mayor, if I'd have Jamie just talk a little bit about the engineering and some of the goals and stuff that he wants to do.
Mr. Mayor, and Commissioners, I'd just like to go through some of the accomplishments and goals and challenges we have in the engineering department this year. We have been short-staffed for the entire time I've been in the position, which is kind of over a year in interim and less than that, I think since the start of December was permanent. Some of the accomplishments we did with short staff, and I'd like to put out to my staff, they do a great job. We've constructed capital projects in excess of $8.5 million. That includes the west side annexation, new water main on Lindale, which is a challenging project, dealing with traffic and detours and stuff last summer.
May I, excuse me, Jamie, could you come sit at the table here? So
Sure.
that would be great. Thank you.
You can stand if you like.
No, you don't have to do that.
And then we've applied for and received grants in concert with the Public Works Department in excess of $7 million. That includes the ARPA minimum allocation and competitive grants, as well as a $125,000 RRTL grant for the upper 10-mile watershed infrastructure. My staff provides review and approval for over 35 amended plat subdivisions and annexations this year. Provided permit review for over 470 building and street opening permits, and ongoing oversight and inspection for all the sidewalk and ADA programs. That's some of the stuff we accomplished this year. Some of the challenges we're having, Mr. Mayor and Commission, are we're having a staff shortage. We're short 2 engineers and 1 tech at the present time, and we really haven't had a whole lot of interest in those jobs. We have a lot of, typically on a year, we would manage maybe about $5 million of capital projects. It's probably 3 times that this year, upcoming year in ARPA with ARPA projects. So managing the ARPA capital projects and grant management on that's going to be a challenge for us this year. I think obtaining sufficient consultants to design capital projects is going to be a challenge this year, as well as obtaining sufficient contractors. That's been a challenge for several years now. As you saw when we bid the Rodney Street project, I believe we only have 1 bidder. That's an ongoing challenge in Helena, and something that I'd like to see change, but I'm not sure will. Our ticketing and permitting software involves a lot of paperwork. We'd like to maybe see that go online or make it easier for people to do it remotely and not have to come into the department. And then another thing, I don't know if Ben's going to speak to, but something that's near and dear to my heart is we've had ongoing drought issues and water supply issues the last several years. We haven't been able to use some of our vital infrastructure just because we don't have the water. The snow hasn't fallen. And some of the goals we have for next year is to get the completed budgeted capital projects, our normal $5 million every year.
We have a water treatment master plan out under contract that we'd like to complete this year, that will go along with our completed storage and distribution master plan that we completed last year, that the consultant came and presented to the commission on. Same for the wastewater collection and treatment master plan. We had negotiations with the consultant on that just today. We're looking to finalize that contract in the next week or two and get that underway. That's a combined collection system, pumping system, and water and wastewater treatment master plan, whereas the water side we split out. Completion of some new groundwater supply wells in order to develop our groundwater reservation set aside by the PNFC and Supreme Court in 1993. That goes hand in hand with the ongoing water supply issues. We have to develop that by December 2025. So it's kind of a fast track project. We got 2 consultants currently working on that. And then we'd like to streamline our development review process. And that would go hand in hand with hiring a new development engineer and strive to be consistent with new developers and people wanting to annex in town, and making that process a little more transparent, streamlined, easy, so everyone knows what to expect. They can get through it in a timely manner. Commission and Mr. Mayor, do you have any questions?
Mr. Mayor, thank you for the information. Just a question. You mentioned the ticketing and permitting software and development review. Do you have concrete plans for change there, or can you talk a bit about your, timeline and plans for when some of these processes might be able to be put online?
The first plan would be to get the development engineer on staff, and that's going to be working with the new community development director. I believe Ryan has them under me in the org chart. That's primarily for consistency, so we can give a consistent message as far as the engineering department goes. The plan is probably to start on it in earnest after construction season. And once we get the groundwork laid for the ARPA projects over the summer, the survey and environmental processes we need to do to get the big ticket items out of the way. And we've already started meeting with the transportation department, trying to figure out how, as you know, they were split a few years ago off, trying to figure out exactly who's taking what, whether my department will still handle sidewalk permits or their department, or road openings, whether that's going to be all transportation department. There's some issues there with typically when people walk in to get a permit, they come here, and the transportation department is out at the fleet services out on the east side. So we're already working through some of those issues. Ongoing discussion going on.
We have them, and we are working with transportation. I'm hoping within the next 3-4 months that with the ticketing, as far as doing permitting for street opening and stuff, that we can have a concrete new process to be able to do that. As far as development, it's going to take a little bit more, just because we do have a new development director.
I have a question.
Please. And I just add that, so we had a leadership team meeting on Tuesday, and the new community development director made it known that the management team, that in the parking lot on the second day of work, we had a conversation, and we made the whole streamlining the development review process priority. So the community development director is heading that project up. It will include the city attorney's office, all of public works, all of transportation, as well as all of the disciplines within community development department. And so I think that we will have our first kickoff meeting here within the next 2 weeks.
My question was connected to that, and I know like the building department was talking about I think they use Trackit to map. Is that the conversation of, are we using the same system so people can watch from beginning to end, or what does that look like? Or is that to be determined?
I think it's to be determined, but it's that integration that we want between and among all the departments, so that we have a predictable process, we have a timely review. that the responsible part is returning phone calls.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing.
Okay, that's great.
I think we also strive for consistency. Me personally, for my department, strive for consistency, so everyone feels like they're being treated the same.
You bet.
It's clear engineering standards, and that's the big thing.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. It's probably not a question, and certainly maybe one you don't want, if it were a question to answer tonight, but it'd be useful to have a lay person's guide to our water supply system, our reservoirs, and now our wells, and how they all interface, and how we can, as citizens, be assured that we have water going down the road. I mean, it's a big issue, and people talk about it all the time. Of course, it's in our face that we live in a Western environment, and folks notice it's drying up. And so why are we drilling wells? What are the wells used for now? What's the intention for using them down the road? And how does that work with our existing water distribution system? That sort of thing. That makes sense?
Yes, Mr. Commissioner, I think part of that is typically covered in the report we send out every year.
Well, that'd be useful if you send a report
The
every
water
year.
quality report we send out every year tends to cover those issues a little bit.
Well, something that we could promote as a city. This is what we're doing for our citizenry, and we're working hard at it. And we're going to make sure we don't run out of water, but we're also going to assert a water right over it as we drill wells. And why do we do that? I mean, just the purpose of what we are doing in terms of water, if you will, acquisition.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioner, I think that's a great idea, and I think we have public meetings for all these projects. Usually when it's sewer or water public meeting, it's not well attended.
I bet.
If anyone attends, Ben does a great job of doing some outreach events. A few of those, like run for water that we do out of 10 Mile. We haven't been able to do the last couple of years because of COVID. And I think working with the PIO's office a little bit last summer when we had the water issues, but ongoing, I think that's a great idea. And Tim has also indicated that we should tout our accomplishments a little more in public
Precisely.
works than we do. I don't necessarily think that's a bad idea, especially in a general perspective. I don't know that we want to give everyone the nuts and bolts of locations of our vital water supply. I think telling them what we do and how we do it is a great idea, because there's a lot of people behind the scenes that work a lot of hours, Saturday mornings at 2 a.m. and Christmas mornings when water breaks, that show up and do make sure that the water flows and the toilets flush. And often it's not talked about a lot. So I think that's a great idea to maybe move forward with public information officer on putting something out along those lines.
Well, we've already noted apparently, because I picked up someplace that we were using some of our well water to irrigate city properties. That's the sort of thing as that grows, that we utilize that more, that we should be talking about. We don't have to treat that water for irrigating, and so that's a good thing.
Well, Mr. Mayor and Commissioner, I think that's also a good thing to note, that the water reservation set aside in 1993 is not anything we're taking from new houses in the valley or anything like that. It's something that was set aside. No one else can develop other than us, set aside by the Supreme Court and the DNRC. And it's important to maybe get to the public as well, that we're not taking anybody's water. No one else can use it. It's reserved for us.
Well, I'm glad you just went there, because that was a question I got the other day. Are you stealing the valley's water? Which I thought was a hoot, but I couldn't answer that with any certainty. I was sure we weren't, but I'm glad to hear you just say it tonight. So that kind of public information would be very useful. That'd be good.
Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, maybe we'll work with Ben to get something inserted, maybe even if it's just a diagram on the system and how many people work on it and what's typically involved in a month into the water quality annual report.
Mayor, I would just add that this is a broader discussion within the whole development review process, and it goes back to some of what we talked about earlier in terms of what we own, what commission it's in. And it ties into the sustainability coordinator position. All of these issues, we already know what they are, and let's put them together so that we have a good narrative and understanding on what it is that we own, what condition it's in, and how's it working. including water quantity. How long can we grow based upon present water quantity, and how do those projections change with climate changes and all of those types of things? And a lot of that information's out there. I think we need to update it. I think we need to bring it back together again. And part of that will be some field trips that we hope to schedule with the mayor and the commissioners, so that you can actually see what you own. So that when you're sitting in this room making decisions. You can,
Yeah, and I just wanted to add is with our public information, the contract that we are already starting some of those priorities. We have the consultant down there doing, working with Jake and RPIO is working on recycling, and then also has done stuff on the 10 miles. So we are already in that process, coming up with the layman's term and actually getting these
Keep in mind,
processes
you're
out
talking
there.
to the ultimate layman here.
Yep.
All right, so, serving at a request of a number of voters who thought I could sit here, but that doesn't mean I know anything. So it's important to just remember, information is gold. And so,
That's why we hired someone instead of having an engineer explain it. I think we're pretty much to a point of, these are the administration, engineering, industrial ones that are spread out throughout the overall organization of public works. So if you have any questions with that part of the budget, I'd be happy to answer any of those before we go into water, which is the enterprise ones.
Any other final comments?
I just have one question, comment. It's related to growth, but not on the water piece. I think this will be maybe for the development engineer when that position is filled. One of the things that has been part of the conversation, and it keeps coming to us when we get these variances, and more people are gonna be asking to be annexed, and we are in positions where and David's not in this conversation obviously, but we're not building out, complete infrastructure, even though they're coming into town. And so how do we, I think with that position, it will be helpful if the commission can get kind of more expertise and guidance on what's appropriate and not appropriate when we start considering variances and the like, because if you want to be annexed, and part of our growth policy is that we have connectivity throughout town, which means sidewalks and curb and gutter. And I think part of that broader picture, that I don't think taxpayers who are already here should be paying for someone else's new street, but definitely something that buck stops with us. So how does all of that integrate to ensure that we are we're allowing it, when we allow annexation, that it happens in a manner where we're not having to give variances for 5 million things that actually need, there's a reason that we have standards.
Mayor and Commissioner, I think that the bigger picture is critical. And that includes what's our water quantity, what do we own, what condition is it in. And it's very important activities taking place in this building yesterday or tomorrow. And that is the rural zoning standard with the county, which then they're going to go to the urban standard, which our whole community development group will be engaged. I've talked to the county commissioners about it and let them know that we'll be full partners in that discussion. And I think that goes not completely what we're saying, but a long way. And so it'll be very important, and I'm hearing really good things as to that meeting tomorrow with the county commission.
Anything else? We can move on to water. If you guys want to come up. So of course, we have Ben that does the treatment. And then we have Trent, and they can go over real briefly is some of the accomplishments, some of the stuff that they did and the goals, a few of the challenges. That'll be repeated over and over, of course, is inflation, costs, hiring, aging infrastructure. So we'll keep it to a minimum. So go ahead, Ben.
Mayors, commissioners, Ben Rigby, water treatment. Just want to say thank you for saying thank you to the staff for the recent break. It was very well received. They appreciate it. So I just want to say that. Thank you. Accomplishments in water treatment. A big one for us is being fully staffed. The issue we've had over the years is summer vacations in the summertime. We go to 2 plants. Water production goes up 4 or 5 times, so we need more staff to be there. So one of the big reasons why we all live in this great state is for the summer months to do fun things, fun activities. So being fully staffed has helped out a lot. 11 out of the 14 employees have been hired over the past 3 years, so we're constantly training, succession. We've already seen the plus of having 2 extra operators, having people quit and having someone step up in line. It's helped out a lot in the past couple of years. The big achievement we've also done over the past couple of years is just optimization. Really try to optimize, take that dollar as far as we can go. One of the biggest ones that we thought we could do in-house was chemical feed upgrades. One big one is we upgraded our chemical feed system at 10 Mile. And just this year alone, we've saved 50% in polymer, which not only does it save us money, it saves washing the filters. It's an extra 4,000 gallons of sludge not going out that we have to be removed to take to the landfills. So it's a snowball effect on the optimization for the chemical feeds. Another one we've tried to do is heating and cooling, lighting upgrades, things like that. Our heating systems and our air conditioning units, they've just gotten old over the years. So we've saved 25%. And I guess, disclaimer, well, these numbers were pre-inflation. So I have to readjust these. So we've saved 25% in heating and cooling and LED light upgrades at both facilities. Working on that in-house with our electrician. With the Halo Eureka system, it's its own little system in town down by Reader's Village. We own groundwater rights to that. We're trying to optimize those as much as we can. We've almost doubled the output of the Eureka well. And what's great about the Eureka well is it's groundwater, like Commissioner Fever touched on earlier, that it's groundwater, so it doesn't have to be treated. The only thing we have to do with it is we have to have chlorine residual because we're surface treatment plants, so we inject a little bit of chlorine into it just to meet the DEQ requirements. We also have a discharge monitoring report and 10 Mile treatment plant. We fall under kind of the same category as wastewater. So we successfully renewed our permit last year. So we have our own issues. We don't have nutrient issues. We have Superfund issues with metals and everything, which you're aware in the 10 Mile watershed, which I brought a map. If you have any questions or comments on the watershed over there, I can go up there and talk about those to you. Challenges we've had, obviously, everybody said it before us, inflation as far as chemicals go. The big one alone is sodium hypochlorite, which is bleach, chlorine, has gone up 97% alone just in 1 calendar year. So that's where we're trying to optimize, figure out how we can cut just chlorine costs along. So that's one big thing we've noticed. The other one we've noticed is our electricity bills have gone up about 50% over the past year. So trying to cut costs on, less backwashes, things like that we can do ourselves. The other issue that, once again, the entire world is having, not just us, is shipping freight. We ordered a flow meter, for instance, last September, and we just got it about 2 weeks ago. So things like that. We ordered a fan for the mechanic last August, still haven't received that. So you'll see those in carryovers on others too. So this is some of the issues we're having, and obviously climate. We're living in the Rockies, so we get a lot of our water from the watershed up there, like I'll talk about. We just ran into more volatile weather, spring weather in winter months when we're not allowed to store water in Chesapeake and Scott. So things that, they're just, the patterns aren't the same. Obviously, forest fire is a concern for 10 Mile. So that's another reason why we're trying to perfect our groundwater rights in the valley, is to combat any issues that come up with forest fires, things like that. Aging infrastructure, obviously an issue. Once again, we're not special in that category as far as those issues. Water rights, we own the water to 10 Mile, and we have an issue. You'll see in the goals here that we actually have a dispute with a resident up in 10 Mile watershed on Walker Creek that we served him a letter in April. We haven't heard any comment on that. So if you have questions on that, I'll elaborate some more. It's just an issue that we're going to start seeing more and more, this water theft as it becomes less available. Onto our goals, obviously, number one, no water restrictions. So we're gonna try our best this year for no water restrictions. Complete the facility master plan, like Jamie touched on. Our Eureka well optimization, like I said, we've already done our own in-house to 75% higher production. And then once we optimize the well, there is another available 30 to 35% water that we have rights to that we need to perfect. And then obviously the groundwater rights issues. So I will turn it over to Trent and let him talk unless there's questions or concerns yet.
Go ahead, Trent.
Well, you should never kick over a rock and not expect somebody to ask. What's the Walker Creek dispute over? Obviously water, but I mean, what's the issue?
Yes, so there's two landowners. We're on first and second rights to the creek, Walker Creek, and there's a ranch above us who has a pond and it's dammed up, and he does have water rights to that also. But as the first and second owner of the water rights, the only way he can get his water if our water right is fulfilled. So he has he's diverting water when he shouldn't be diverting water. Or he has certain months of the year when he can divert water, and so those are things that we would like to discuss with that landowner.
Thank you.
I just have just a quick question on the increasing costs of the chemicals and the rest. Is there any type of, and this might be a dumb question, but for example, school districts, we do cooperative purchasing with school districts around the state to be able to get a lower price at a larger quantity. Is there any type of service like that for the municipalities to do, like cooperative purchasing to get like bulk of these chemicals?
Mayor, commissioners, that's something that I've talked about, and there's yes and no. Just as you compare us to Billings, they get their polymers on train cars, and then talk about East Helena. So there's just the varying differences there, and I do have agreements with chemical companies on as far as get a hold of me when a truck's coming through for some T-chlor, chlorine. So I do things like that, yes, but as far as a Montana-wide thing, I'm not aware of that. We could look into that for sure.
Just a question on no water restrictions, and what, no, it's a good question.
I was gonna back it.
So last year, it seemed as though people were really surprised by water bills in a certain month, like, oh my God, my water bill's like $500, and restrictions came, but there didn't seem to be a lot of pre-positioning of information regarding the fact that your water is going to go up, and there might be restrictions. And my sense from people I spoke with is that they understood why it happened. It made sense and they're okay with it as long as they know. So I get that it's a goal. Do we have a plan to talk about water rates going up in certain months and you can expect your water bills will be higher and or there may be restrictions? Do we have a plan in case we cannot achieve this goal so that people are not unpleasantly surprised?
Mayor, Commissioner, we are ahead of this to try and get public outreach to be able to go forward. But want to say is the restrictions had nothing to do with the water rate increase. The water rate increase was set up several years on a tiered basis. And so that was already passed. So yes, we are trying to get ahead of that. And so that is one that we are working with PIO to get out there that remember, you have tiered increases that you may have increases in your water bill that you're gonna see. But we have them all year round, so it was not tied to the restrictions, but we are already starting to do public outreach on that.
And I remember a case in point, there's this lady that came up, she was ticked off. But she had 5 watering stations, she watered them 3 times a day at 30 minutes per station. Yeah, and then she expected to pay the same amount she paid in the winter.
Yes. I think the timing of the restrictions and the increase,
It
it
did,
appeared to be connected.
Yes.
So to the extent that, again, with this sort of message, the anticipated costs and possible restrictions, I think, again, people seem to understand once it was explained, but that moment of surprise didn't go so well.
And one that Ed pointed out is we have a water conservation flyer that is going out with the water bill, so it is going out in the next month.
Yeah, June.
In June, so that'll kind of spell this out to be able to talk about it and do the tiered increases, so.
So quick of the distribution. I'll keep mine quick and simple. We don't quite have as much broad range going on. To highlight a couple of accomplishments for the last year, we did respond to and repair 18 main breaks in the water system over the last year, which is not part of the course for an aging infrastructure. We got it on top of it, got it done. Didn't have any extended outages, so that's an upside. We did replace 212 existing water meters. We'll be going out again this year and doing another round of them, just in an attempt to try to keep ahead of our MIUs going bad and not reading for us. And probably the other accomplishment, I don't know if you want to call it, but something I think's improved a lot in the last year or two. I think our communication cooperation with both Ben and Jeff and just our departments, working together to solve issues. I know Ben worked very close with Jay Newland, the water distribution supervisor here very recently on some water loss and leakage up by Hale Tanks and that stuff. He's got her, communicating on a daily basis and working together really good. And I think that's something that's gotten a lot better over last year and it's paying dividends for both our departments and the city. So I want to mention that. Challenges for us, kind of the same as everything else, AOG infrastructure and the breaks and repairs that come from that. Probably the biggest challenge going forward that I see, the 2 biggest challenges is staffing. We still have a couple open positions and that's getting tougher and tougher. The other one is lead time on supplies. All indications are that pretty much everything we use is getting further and further out. We just got indications that hydrants are probably as much as 6 months or more out if we order one today. We do, as far as our general maintenance stuff, we have a fairly good stock. We guys keep up on that. We have stuff around for emergencies and that. But I think it's going to start impacting the projects we put out and that availability to accomplish those things on a timely manner. Along with that, a few of our goals, we do want to hire our remaining 2 maintenance workers that we have open. Like to complete our new backflow policy. I don't know who all may be aware of it, but we've been working with community development and some community stakeholders to try to put some sideboards on and clearly define a policy for what we as a city will be requiring for backflow prevention devices, both commercially and residentially, primarily commercially. Had a couple stakeholder meetings. They went well. We got some discussions to have, some adjustments to be made. Like our eventual ultimate goal, a little ways down the road, will be a great policy to you guys for approval. Hopefully get that done so we put a clear message out there to everyone who's involved. We'd like to get another 20 to 30 fire hydrants replaced this year. Get our older hydrants out of the system, some of the less operable ones we're concerned with. Part of that will be done within the project and the remainder our crews will take care of.
And just with, now that you mentioned hydrant, believe this or not, I got someone who wanted to meet with me. I got concerned. I said, okay, yeah. He said, why is the city of Helena keep letting the dogs pee on, we call it MSU, because you have blue and yellow. I said, why can't you have orange and whatever else, so I'm just warning you, I'll just refer them to you next time. Yeah, but he said, that's MSU color, why is pee on it? And he took a picture here and sent it to me. So,
On my dog. Well, thank you. I like that. One of the other goals, want to continue our outreach. We have been, or last year, done better through the maps or EIS staff is set up. So the community can see our small projects, our maintenance activities that we're doing, not just our major capital infrastructure projects. We're planning on continuing that, making that better this year, being on top of it. We do have some sandwich boards we're putting out in areas where we know we'll be doing scheduled maintenance. Stuff where it's impacting that neighborhood or community. We're trying to get that out ahead of time so that individuals in those areas will know what's going on ahead of time, be able to plan around that. So for our last one, we've upped our valve exercise and maintenance in an attempt to try to get ahead of that, make sure we have less inoperable valves. Our goal is to get our goal really is to establish a goal. It's not something that's been hit hard over time, but it's definitely something that needs to be done. So our goal for this year is to take that information that we are getting, try to establish a threshold of where we want to be, where we feel like we need to be, X number of years since each valve has been exercised, and try to get, halfway or so to that goal this year.
With that, Mayor, that's the water portion of the overall budget. Do you have any questions on that? Our biggest increase that you're gonna see is chemicals. I mean, you can look there is that it's status quo except for chemicals, and we're kind of tied to that. And electric, chemicals, fuel, parts and stuff like that, so.
Comments or questions for Director Lewin? So, yeah, this is a crazy question, but does it have to be yellow and blue?
With the hydrant, is it?
I don't know, I mean, because these guys were really concerned about this. So you're saying yes.
Yes.
The top definitely. The lower part is, they come that way.
The blue on the top of the hydrant tells us what volume we get out of there. So it's these guys over here in the fire department that look at that so they know what they're gonna start to get out of there if we do have a fire. So that is a uniform.
See, now I got an explanation for that stuff next time. Absolutely. Okay, thank you. Any questions for Director Lewin? Thank you, Director. You continue.
Then wastewater, we have Trent again and then Jeff. Go over real quick and.
Jeff Brown, wastewater treatment facility. Some of the accomplishments we've had at the plant over the last year, we in April passed our 8th consecutive quarterly whole effluent toxicity test, and we're granted a reduction in species by DEQ for our permit at small cost savings. I've been at the plant 12 years. It's the longest string that we've had since I've been there. So we provided COVID-19 wastewater samples to Carroll College so they could post to the county website. I'm sure everybody saw that. We were able, through optimization, to achieve some of the lowest biologically treated phosphorus discharge levels in the history of the facility. We are putting the finishing touches on our SCADA system, which is a web-enabled facility operations and emergency call-out system that actually was getting the bugs worked out of it today when I left. So, goals going forward are continued optimization, the completion, implementation of a master plan, installation of a new primary scum removal system, and installation of a new backup generator for the back half of our plant.
Which you just awarded on Monday.
Challenges really in line with everybody else. Maintenance of equipment, we don't pump the cleanest water. Some of our equipment's fairly old. We have an excellent staff. Staffing vacant positions, we have one vacancy. Now, we did have one qualified candidate and we're just in the process of hiring. Identifying additional ways to cost effectively optimize our treatment process. kind of a learning process all the time with everybody. Rising costs and availability of material and chemicals. And then, of course, regulatory uncertainty.
And Mayor, I'd just like to point out that this is going to be the biggest thing you have in wastewater treatment in the coming years. When we bring our rate study forward, you will see that at some point, we are going to see a huge increase, you know, that is going to be associated with it. It could be rate increases of 15 to 20%. And this is based on our wastewater discharge that we are looking at DEQ and going through the Senate Bill 358, working through those rules. And that is going to be the biggest issue that is going to come up in the near future with that. So that is huge. That's sitting on the horizon, but can turn over to the distribution.
Mayor, just a quick question, and it looks like a big deal to me. But can you speak briefly about 6 sewer backup calls down from a 10-year average of 32?
Yeah, I think that's probably our most outstanding accomplishment over the last few years. I mostly put that down to the changes we've had in our GIS integration, our work order management, and the work that Shane, our sewer supervisor, has done with our GIS staff. Just the way they manage that on a day-to-day basis. Going from an old paper system where, you know, you had to remember to pull this file out, which got a little bit better enhanced system to, you know, you pop up today's computer file and these are ones that says due to now the guys, it's to the point where they have established a scoring system for every line in town through age, material, work order history and all of that. It pre-populates on their iPad. I looked this morning, we've actually managed to, and within the last year, get up to an industry standard of, we don't have a line in town that we're aware of. It's been more than 3 years since it's been cleaned. As of this morning, I think we had less than 2,000 feet of line that was past due. And I think it's that work going forward and keeping that where you don't have lines that get missed. And it's getting hit on that regular basis, and the stuff that needs attention is getting attention. It's accomplished that. You guys have done a fantastic amount of work getting there.
Thank you.
That's a question. So on the piece of, you know, potential rate increases because of state regulations that we have to meet, DEQ. Is there anything, because it's driven from regulation, is there anything that falls under like the unfunded mandate clauses that, I mean, isn't the state on the hook for some of this?
So Mayor and Commissioner, it's a, I wouldn't say it's quite arbitrary, but it's a moving target. And standards can change, either there's legislation, there's EPA, there's all the players weighing in. At some point, our decisions are made on a 20-year basis so that we can bond multi-million-dollar improvements, and then 5 years later, we have a review. And oh, by the way, you've got to make a change.
Yeah.
There's a large group of legislators that want to identify specifically the regulatory cost of those type of decisions. And I know that through the league, through our public works directors, they're at the table working on those very issues right now. And it is a big deal. We don't have the information that developed to the level that we need to, but we are working on it. Is that a fair assessment?
That's a fair assessment.
And not that I don't support, you know, high standards for environmental, you know, impact, but for us to have to pay for it on our own, but I hope that is a conversation. I mean, who knows with this legislature, but I mean that you can't be asking for things that no one can pay for.
Well, Mayor, if I may, this is a huge issue. Not only in Montana, but nationally. What I will say unabashedly and very confidently is that city government invests more in clean water than any other level of government. That might have changed a little bit the last couple of years because of ARPA and CARES Act. and the infrastructure bill coming down. But for 15 or 20 years, the federal government was out of the infrastructure business. And we know that we're making investments and discharging cleaner water into the waterways that we're taking out. We also know that unless they start holding accountable everybody that's discharging into the water, including just in this geography, 12,000 septic tanks. Our people shouldn't have to pay for that water quality improvement. And those are the type of issues I know that our folks are at the table and we're wrestling through them. But it's hard to argue facts. A lot of the watersheds not regulated like we are. And I think the results that we get through our folks are exceptional.
I agree with everything you just said. In fact, there's a lot of unregulated, if you will, water use going on. It imperils us all.
And just wanted to point out, the reason that I said that there'll be a big increase is we don't know yet. We don't know what it'll be. We don't know when it'll be, but there is something sitting on the horizon and there will be lawsuits involved in that. We'll bring it up in the next few years when we figure it out. No,
Oh, I thought I heard you said how long it'll be. What?
a few years, 10, 25, 2, I don't know yet. Yeah.
But Mayor and Commissioners, I think that as a governing body, you should feel comfortable. Not with this whole situation in terms of who is degrading Montana ground and surface water. It's not us. Our investments are very good investments, quantity and quality, and comparable at no other level in government.
And we're doing things to be able to show that and back it up. So we'll bring that. So do you have anything on the wastewater? Commissioners? And it's chemicals. So we'll move over real quick to Trent with the stormwater. And the biggest one that I want to point out with stormwater again is going to be the assessment. We have to figure out legally what we can do just because of the airports and what came about that and how we need to work through that. So we will be working on that, but that's going to be our biggest challenge that is out there. And then also the regulations with the MS4. So what do you have, Trent, as far as what you got?
Not a ton on storm. It dovetails so much with our sewer maintenance, same staff, same people. So it's not a whole lot there. Some of our goals and that line also with our water guys as well. So well, a couple things, our guys managed to get, 5 inlets completely rebuilding houses here. Just ones they found were off streets out of the way, non-functioning flood undone. They did on their own. Identified a whole bunch of inlets needed raised and repairs plan. Was one of the goals, get those in-house taken care of and done. Things we can do, trying to identify a bunch of areas where we can do stuff ourselves. Do it in-house, get it taken care of rather than put it out for a project and pay overhead and mark up on that stuff. It's not as well funded as water and sewer, understandably, just the nature of the beast. So trying to find ways we can do a lot of this work ourselves and not have to put out the bid and pay that added cost if we can. Our guys, once again, every single year, they go around town, they inspect or clean every single inlet in town, take a look at it, figure out its condition. One of the things I managed to do this last year that hadn't been done quite some time, not sure the last time it was done, given what we found, is those short pipes going from our inlets to the mains. Inlets have been cleaned for years. Those chunks hadn't been. Guys went through, identified a lot of those, got a good portion of those done this last year, and they'll be getting no more done this year. With that, goals be follow through on the inlets and risers need done. Going to remove a bunch of the built up over the year sediment from some of our ponds. Get in there, get that done, get some of that ourselves, improve capacity in that one. Another hopefully cost saving effort we can do ourselves before it goes far enough to be capital project. And then also try to identify and
and repair some of the valley gutters, that stuff, those street crossings and curb to curb through neighborhoods aren't necessarily functioning correctly. Try to get those done and see how many of those we get done in a value manner as best we can. Ryan kind of pretty much spoke to our challenges. Outside of those, I don't think we really have a whole lot, so.
Comments or questions from the commission?
Well, illicit, is that like the same thing as illegal?
Yeah, generally, with the caveat that if it's not bad enough, then it's not a chargeable crime. With those, you probably have curiosity of what those four were. Largest one being a construction company who had a hose failure on a piece of machinery, leaked a bunch of hydraulic fluid. We managed to get on site very swiftly, work with them, corralled it, stopped it. It did go down the street a ways, but they were very helpful working with us to ensure that that got scrubbed, cleaned, moved, absorbed, and all taken care of before it hit any part of our underground storm system or any of our storage facilities. The rest were small residential discharges, utility hoses being leaking, something like that, camper dripping, small things like that, short conversations with somebody, just make sure they understand that those aren't things that we like to see down on our streets, so.
And if it's a specific thing in the MS4 permit instead of illegal, they call it illicit. So with that is the storm, or we'll just go over the solid waste. There will be this transfer station, the collection of residential, the commercial, landfill monitoring, and then also recycling. One, I just want to point out with landfill monitoring is that a lot of people don't know that is that the Centennial Park is a landfill. That we do have, it is sinking. But then we also have discharge of contaminated groundwater that we are using the golf course as treatment. So we collect it, put it into the pond and do that. So one of the budget items that you have is the landfill monitoring that collects methane and to do everything. We really aren't asking for any increase on that, but just wanted to get there since it wasn't on the agenda. With that, I'll turn it over to Pete. He's the guru of solid waste in Lewis and Clark County and City of Helena.
Mayor, commissioners, just to touch on a few accomplishments and goals and challenges with solid waste division. We this last year we completed GPS routing for our residential collection trucks. Currently in the city, we have 14 residential collection routes. So GPS in them really helps with our efficiencies and how we provide service to our constituents. All the trucks have tablets in there, the drivers are trained how to use them. It automatically sends information back to the office. So when the phone rings and somebody says, that we missed their can, we can politely let them know that our driver was there at 7:20 a.m. and your can was not out for pickup, but we'll be happy to come back and pick that can up. But that's a big accomplishment. That was 2 years in the making. New staff hiring in the last 6 months, we've hired 5 new employees. All turned out to be great hiring. Increased recycling drop-off sites. So currently the recycling fund is jointly funded through Lewis and Clark County and the City of Helena. Those 2 additional sites were put in the Scratch Gravel District, the Grub State and Mini Basket. This last year, we provided service to 188,000 vehicle transactions through our transfer station. That's in 353 days. So we have a high traffic count coming through that facility. Waste and recycling services, we continue to provide those services up to par all the way through the COVID-19 pandemic. And recently worked with PIO and Ed and Leah on producing a educational recycling video. That's in the finishing touches, and that'll go out to educate our public on how to utilize recycling.
Some of our challenges in solid waste is with code enforcement. You know, we get calls, people complain about this or that. A lot of it is, can you get my neighbor to pull his can off the street? And we pay them a visit, we give them a copy of the codes, we ask them to do that. A lot of them are consistently doing it, others, they don't, they refuse to pull the can out of the right of way. And code enforcement would help with some of those issues. Capital improvements, some of our biggest problems right now during COVID is our equipment replacements. You know, we're budgeting for some new trucks. We're being told now, if we order the trucks now, we could possibly see delivery in 2.5 years from the order point. So that really increases our maintenance costs from our existing fleet that we're trying to replace. High traffic counts at the transfer station.
Can we pursue that conversation just a little bit? Because, and you guys weigh in, but we have to bid out over a certain amount. And so if you bid out for a new vehicle, but they're showing up and saying, here's the price, that puts us in a position of not getting the truck and not complying with the law. It's a very awkward place to be. Am I missing a point on that?
They stop by and want to sell you a truck, is that?
Yeah. Right now, Tim, the replacement of those, we are able to utilize Sourcewell. And Sourcewell is when we have a list of vendors that are in there that anything over 80,000, you know, we can use Sourcewell. But what's going on with the shortage of this equipment, we have big vendors out there purchasing these trucks and putting automated systems on them, and they're driving them around and they're offering them, pull up in front of your door. You can buy these two units today for $425,000. Typically, the last trucks we bought were $330,000. So they're increasing the prices. And we recently tried to order a transfer semi, and they would not give us a build slot for a government order because of our reduction. So we received a reduction in pricing. They were not going to tie their orders up with any government orders when they can sell it to the private sector for 20% above. So that's kind of what we're doing.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Understanding the risk of that.
Let's go. Anything else?
Okay. Let's see. Goals. We want to continue working hand in hand with Lewis and Clark County on integrated solid waste management. We have a very good partnership with the county. Research the results of the integrated solid waste master plan. I look forward to looking at those results for implementation. The same with the strategic waste diversion plan, researching those results and look at implementation. Number one goal is to provide economically and fiscally responsible operations to all the users. And we will continue to expand services and waste diversion for residents in Helena and county. So with that, if anybody has any question.
And the only other point that I put up is we are taking a lot of cash out of residential, and this is on purpose. It was to purchase a couple vehicles. We are not asking for a rate increase because we are waiting for the integrated solid waste master plan to come forward. So you'll see a big deduction in cash. So that's about the only thing in the budget that's not status quo.
We're on the master plan and then the waste diversion strategic plan. I guess one is the waste diversion going to inform the solid waste master plan? And I guess do those happen concurrently or consecutively? I know the solid waste master plan is like in development right now. And then on that question, are we gonna see, we won't see any of all of the requests that end up coming as a result of that master plan would be in FY24, is that right?
Mayor, Commissioners, the strategic plan is basically done. We are looking at coming in front of the commission in June, July, sometime in that, to give you that. It is going to inform the integrated solid waste master plan, which we are now in the scope and fee process with the steering committee. So it'll come forward. You might see it in 2024, and some of it might not be until 2025 because just based on how long it's going to take to do it in the public outreach. So we'll give you updates periodically throughout the year.
Good. Thank you.
Anything with solid waste? All right, in the essence of time, I just want to point out that you have 3 maps or 4 maps in there, and we won't drill on that. Is we have a vicinity map if Danae, you want to put that up. But we have a vicinity map that basically just shows in conjunction where our watershed is, our 10-mile watershed with the city limits. Then we have the 2 ARPA projects that just show the intakes, the overall Red Mountain Flume, where our reservoirs are. That just gives an idea of what we're doing as far as ARPA projects, where they're going to be. And then you have the Crosstown connector in the Hale. That is just to give us where the ARPA projects are going to be located. And we've talked to you, but you can take a look at that and come back if you have any questions. Then we have our capital projects that are in the packet. It'll tell you we have very few new requests or cap requests in FY 2023. The other ones are carryovers. So if you look at the map that we have for capital projects, the yellow ones are carryovers that we're trying to get done. That has to do with contractors, consultants, and staff capacity. So we're trying to clean them up. And then the limited ones that we're asking for is 1, because of ARPA, 2, because we have the master plans out there that we're trying to get taken care of. And the blue ones are going to be the increases. So I'm not going to go into any of them except for, I know Commissioner Dean is interested in the solar one. We bid the project. We did not get any responsive bidders, so we had to rebid it. So that one is in the process. So we are looking at the next couple of weeks to have another bid on that one. So that was the only update, unless you have questions. Oh, yeah.
Commissioner Dean.
I just have
go ahead.
Sorry. Would it be possible to, similar to the discussion we're having of like a more public information for the layperson about how all of our water system works, how our solid waste system works, particularly with the county as well, because I think it is, like, I still get confused by it, and I don't think the general public has any idea how we work with the county, who owns what, where your waste goes, where your compost goes, what all of it.
Mayor, Commissioner, is yes, we have already had one that we went to the steering committee to talk about that. It's Pete developed that, and then Leah Anderson in conjunction with that. We do have some of that information. I'd be greatly to come back and ask you, and we are putting together with the PIO, with the recycling, and put all that together so we have a better understanding of everything. So yes, we have most of that already in place and would be glad to bring it to an admin meeting.
Mayor, and I just said very briefly that this is just an example of what type of tours we'd like to take you and the commission on. And of course, it's well beyond that, but it's a matter of working with the clerk's office and trying to figure out when we can all get together to do some good tours.
Well, if the mayor doesn't want to go, the rest of us do.
How did the mayor get in the middle of that?
Oh, he'll be leading the tour.
No, please continue, sir.
That's all I have.
Okay, comment or questions for Director Leland?
This is not a subject that I necessarily want to address today. I think it's mostly informational that can be handled, say, in an email, but it's certainly a subject that I've talked about a fair bit over a couple of years. Is our service line replacement loan program, and just kind of a breakdown of the historic usage, maybe from the inception to date. And again, like I said, I think given the time constraints that we've had today, I don't necessarily want to discuss it, but if we get sort of an informational email or something to that effect.
Or maybe even schedule it up in the short future for an actual discussion.
Just to add to that is that we are ready and it's primed up. It just hasn't came to priority because other things, but
Yep.
I know Jamie has done the research and he's already put the memo together, so we are ready to be able to do that, so we'll bring it forward.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone from the public wishes to address the commission? Clerk, do we have anybody online?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, at this time, I have no hands raised and I've received no public comment through the Q&A.
Do we have any final comments from the commission?
I apologize, Mr. Mayor. I do have one hand that popped up.
It's in case I have a question.
She said she had one.
Okay.
I apologize. There was probably a delay on my end. I have Denise Rothbarber with her hand raised.
Go ahead, you have the floor, Denise.
Okay, am I unmuted?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. So thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I am a representative of the Citizen Conservation Board, and we have been working very closely and very well with the Public Works Department on a variety of different things, including the Strategic Waste Reduction Plan and the beginning of the master plan. But I did want to note that we have asked for a line item in the Public Works Department of $20,000 to go towards public education that would help the city achieve its waste reduction goals of 50% waste reduction by 2040. We will be sending a letter to the commissioner to that effect, but I just wanted to let everyone in the room know that we are going to continue to seek that line item in the Public Works Department.
Thank you, ma'am. Madam Clerk, do we have any other comments? Public comments?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, it doesn't appear anyone else has their hand raised at this time.
Any delayed public comment?
I think we've given them their chance, so I think we're good.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.